Should you play multiple instruments or just focus on one? And if you choose the first option, how do you actually go about balancing them so that you're getting better at each instrument? All of that and more coming up right now. Yeah, maybe don't hold them all at the same time at the very least, but worth it for the thumbnail. So let's address that first question right off the bat. Should you play multiple instruments or should you just focus on one? And this is really a personal question, but I'm a little bit biased. I really enjoy playing piano, guitar, bass, drums, trumpet. I enjoy all of those things equally, and for me, it's worth the trade-off. But you have to recognize that there is a trade-off, because if you're dividing your time between all sorts of different instruments, you're not going to have the same amount of time to spend on each one. So you are sacrificing some technique and skill in all of those instruments, really, but not as much as you might think, because a lot of the skills are transferable from one instrument to another. So ultimately, this is a personal choice, whether you want to focus and specialize on one instrument and try and just become the best you possibly can at that one instrument. Even if that is the case for you, however, I still highly recommend learning at least some basic piano skills and ideally drums as well. Singing is also non-negotiable in the practice room, at least. You don't have to perform on stage or anything, but it's just so good for your ears. There are so many benefits to using your voice and to learning basic piano and rhythmic skills. Now, you don't have to spend hours upon hours developing flawless technique on these instruments in order to see the benefits. If you want to do that, that's great, and you will see more benefits that way because you'll have more facility to explore the instruments. But piano is just a great visual tool to visualize and to hear harmony. And of course, drums are crucial because I feel that rhythm is the most important element of music. And my case for singing is mostly to do with your ears. If you're able to sing something, then you can be sure that you're hearing it properly. And then playing it on your instrument is going to be that much easier. I'm a huge advocate for singing anything that you practice, even if it's very, very slow. Just try and get the pitches accurate. Doing this over time will really help develop your ears, and it'll make all aspects of music much easier, much more enjoyable, and you'll improve very quickly. So I think spending some time on these three instruments, whether or not they're your main instruments, is not a waste of time for any serious musician. And I think that if you're not spending some time to learn at least the basics, you're really missing out on a lot of skills and valuable things that you could be learning. If you clicked on this video, though, there's a good chance that you are drawn to a lot of different instruments and to being able to play anything that makes noise. And if it makes you happy, I say go for it, and don't worry too much if you feel that you're taking away from your main instrument, because for me, the trade-off is totally worth it. I mean, it's music. It's supposed to be fun, so do what makes you happy, right? On the other hand, though, I do think it's important, especially when you're first learning an instrument, to have a phase where you're very, very focused on that. So the next thing we're going to talk about is maintenance practice versus improvement practice. Now, maintenance practice, if done correctly, is still improvement practice. It's just that you're working solely on the fundamentals. So, for example, when I started playing piano, I was a music major and my major instrument was trumpet. So I had a lot of gigs and performance opportunities and engagements that I was committed to on trumpet. That said, I was really enjoying playing piano and I wanted to make that my main focus for a while. So I was practicing piano easily 4 or 5 hours a day and only practicing trumpet about 20 minutes. But in that time, I was still getting better at trumpet. So what did I do? I did the fundamental things. I practiced long tones, flexibilities, and learning the music that I needed to learn for gigs. And a lot of that last one I could actually do at the piano, because if I learn something on the piano, then it takes me less than half the amount of time that it would have to transfer that over to the trumpet. I've also developed my ears to the point where I can learn things by ear without having to play them at all, and I practice these things mentally, which is actually a great thing to do. I'll do a whole other video on mental practice. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be into. So really, I think fundamental practice is a better name than maintenance practice, because you are still improving on your basic technique and getting more fluency on that instrument. You're just maybe not learning so many new things so much as refining and maintaining the technique that you've already developed, which is fine. I think it's okay, and in fact a very good thing, to shift your focus mainly on one instrument for a while. And this could be a period of a few weeks or a few months, and often it'll shift around. And right now I've been playing a lot of drums, but I've been making sure to spend at least 20 minutes on each instrument. Now, this fundamental practice is going to change depending on what instrument you're trying to maintain or improve your fundamentals on. For example, for drums, it would probably be rudiments. So you can do that for 20 minutes a day, and that alone is going to make everything a lot easier. So just think, on your instrument, what's the one thing that you could practice that's going to make everything else a lot easier to play? Often this is going to be scales. For wind instruments, long tones. Whatever you feel is going to keep you fresh and sharp on that instrument. And 20 minutes might not seem like a lot, but if you're really, really focusing for that 20 minutes, you turn off all your distractions and you have a clear goal of what you're trying to accomplish, you can actually get way more done in that 20 minutes than you could in 2 hours of just sort of casually noodling. So you'd be surprised what you can get done in that time. Now for me, this fundamental practice takes about 2 hours every day, but if you're only playing 2 or 3 instruments, it'll be a little bit less. After that, I'll spend most of my time on whatever instrument that I'm focusing on at that time, and sometimes that changes daily, sometimes weekly, monthly, whatever I'm feeling really. A lot of this practice beyond the fundamentals is actually playing along to music. Often what I'll do is I'll choose an album. This week I've been playing a lot to the Tower of Power self-titled album, and I'll just pick a different instrument every day. Maybe I played it on drums today, and then I'll play along on bass tomorrow, and just try and pick up as much as I can. If I have to, I'll stop and rewind and think like, oh, what exactly was that fill or that bass line? But for the most part, I try to just play through the whole album and pick up what I can. And that's a really, really powerful way to absorb music and learn it in sort of organic ways. And what you'll notice is that if you're improving your fundamentals, you'll be able to latch on to more of those things. And the more times you play along to an album on different instruments, you get the different perspectives. You're naturally tuning in to each different instrument because you're listening intently to the drums one day, and then the next day you play bass, and then if you go back to the drums, you kind of get a better understanding of how those two elements lock together and how they feed off each other. And that's true for any two instruments. I'm using the example of bass and drums right now, but you could do that on guitar and piano, whatever. It doesn't really matter. You're learning how the different roles function together, and that's going to make you a more mature listener when you're playing with other people. If you've practiced an instrument that someone else is playing, you kind of get where they're coming from a little bit more, and you're able to play with them more effectively because you understand their role, you understand the strengths and limitations of their instrument, and you understand how to feed off of what they're doing and how to play in a way where they're able to listen to you and feed off you. And when you get that feeling of being locked together with everyone in the band, that's when it really starts to groove. That's when it really starts to sound good. That's when you start to make the money. Yeah, not really. Maybe someday. I'm joking, but that is true to an extent. It's obviously not about that. But if you're not even connecting with the people who you're playing with, how can you reasonably expect to connect to an audience? So this has been a somewhat biased tangent on multi-instrumentalism and how to balance those different things. Comment below what instruments you've been practicing these days and maybe an instrument you would like to learn. If you made it this far, give this video a like, subscribe, and hit that bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.